Hello YouTubers, this is Cessnaace back again with another video. Dr. Mark, mad scientist. No, that's not myself. My name is Mark, but I'm neither mad nor am I a scientist. I'm not even a doctor, nor have I ever played one on TV. Although I did once play a country hick and a macho man and a television interviewer and a master control operations engineer, which was a bit of typecasting because that's what I was at the time, and a turkey. Careful, I was dressed in a turkey suit. Now, I would be perfectly willing to upload these videos at some point. Only problem is I retain the safety masters, and they are on 1-inch Type-C reel-to-reel videotape, and I have no way to play them. If I had a way to play them or convert them, I would upload them to my YouTube channel. Anyway, I'm getting off the subject. Dr. Mark, mad scientist, requested that I do a video on my Commodore 64 book collection. And when I read his comment, I noticed he already had a thumbs up on the comment. So I figured I would go ahead and show my Commodore 64 book collection. Although Dr. Mark, mad scientist, may regret that he made that request, because I, for the life of me, don't know how to make this video an interesting one. I'll probably have to throw in one or two Brizzy bonuses just to keep things interesting, because for the life of me, I don't know how I'm going to do this video and make it in any way, shape, manner, or form interesting. First up, from Abacus Software, the anatomy of the Commodore 64. Well, it does have a colorful cover. The blue and red contrast each other nicely with the white. Now, I was thumbing through this book, through the chapters: Machine Language Programming on the Commodore 64, The Next Step, Assembler Programming, a close-up look at the Commodore 64, the synthesizer and its programming, graphics programming, basic from a different viewpoint, and then the chapter that caught my eye. Chapter 7, VIC-20-Commodore 64-CBM/PET. So I went to chapter 7, and what it turned out to be was, although software for those other platforms were not compatible with the Commodore 64, this chapter goes into detail on how to convert programs that were made to run on the CBM line of computers, the PET and the VIC-20, how to convert those so that they will run on the Commodore 64. Which is kind of cool. Okay, this doesn't pertain to the Commodore 64 specifically. However, in a roundabout way it does. 57 practical programs and games in BASIC. BASIC is what we learned when I was in high school, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Class of 77. That's when I graduated high school. Okay, from Commodore Computer. Assembler for the Commodore 64. One page of text pretty much looks like another page of text. Okay, from Commodore Computers and Brady. Commodore's Handbook of Simon's Basic for the Commodore 64 and 128. Got to be a different or a better page than that to show. I don't know that my autofocus would like this. I've noticed with previous videos that if it hasn't focused by the time I get in real close, and if I back up a little bit, sometimes the autofocus will kick in, but it doesn't appear to be cooperating this time around. Wouldn't you know it? Okay, I have hundreds of magazines devoted to the Commodore line of microcomputers, as well as some that are devoted to the Atari line of microcomputers, and even Apple. One of the magazines that I have a lot of issues of that is devoted to the Commodore line is called Compute. Now, Compute contained in each issue several type-in games. This is Compute's first book of Commodore 64 games, 19 games for the Commodore 64 home computer, ready to type in and enjoy. Unpublished games and the best from Compute and Compute's Gazette. I have several issues of that as well. In machine language and basic. I wish someone, it can't be me, but I wish someone would take all the typing games that are out there and save them and release them on either cassette tape or cartridges or floppy disks. It can't be me because I'm dyslexic and I don't have the patience. That's actually one of the shorter games in here. Alright, in addition to books, I also received some manuals. I mentioned in a previous video that an uncle of mine donated to me 2 boxed Commodore 64s and a ton of Commodore 64 peripherals and controllers. However, although I got the instruction manual for this peripheral, I didn't get the peripheral. This is the cassette drive for the Commodore 64. One of the later versions of it, C2N, sometimes referred to as the data set. This is one of the later versions I know because the earlier versions were either black, had a black cassette casing there, and only 5 keys, whereas this one has 6. Also, this version has the LED, which I think was used to indicate when it was saving a program to cassette tape, which it did digitally. Now, initially, standard audio cassette recorders could not be used with the Commodore computers, but eventually somebody started putting out the necessary cables and such so that you could do that. Now this was published in '81, which was the year before the Commodore 64 came out. However, I did some online research and this was compatible with the Commodore 64. In fact, it was compatible with the Commodore 128. It was also compatible with the CBM and PET computers, the 4000 and the 8000, and the VIC-20. There is a CBM. The PET, though, I thought had a built-in dataset drive. And there is a VIC-20, which superficially looks like a Commodore 64. But the insides are quite different. But Commodore designed the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64, its replacement, purposely to have peripherals that were interchangeable, so that if you got the keyboard, which had the processor built into it, you didn't have to replace the monitor or the printer or any of the external drives unless you wanted to. All you had to do was unplug everything, replace the keyboard, take out the VIC-20, put it in the C64, plug everything back in, and away you went, which was quite innovative for the time. The CBM and the PET computer were all in one. They had the monitor built in to the unit itself, whereas the VIC-20 and the C64 and the 128 didn't. Okay, one peripheral I did get is this color video monitor, which still works. Model 1702, or actually that would be 1702 or 1702, depending on where you live. Hooking it up, though, is fairly straightforward. I know, because mine's hooked up. Now, I guess I should have taken the opportunity to mention that of the 12,000 games that were commercially released for the Commodore 64, the vast majority in North America were released on either floppy diskette or cartridge. Not many were released for the dataset because not many Commodore 64 owners in North America had a dataset drive, whereas in Europe the reverse was true. So a lot of games came out in Europe for the dataset drive, such as this one. This is a little Brucey bonus. I've shown this before. I'll go ahead and show it again. This is a UK release of Thunderbirds, based on the popular 60s British television series of the same name. Notice all of the languages there. This was published by Firebird, which was part of British Telecom. Now you'll notice there that it says Fast Loader. Later programs were made so that they loaded it up to 10 times faster, and the cassettes would typically hold about 10 times more data than the originals. Standard audio style cassette tape, although as I said, it would store the data digitally. And the rather plain instructions. Now, this was a budget title. Firebird designated it as Super Silver release. Believe it or not, the person I bought this from on eBay said that this was a 2-in-1 cassette, that it had 2 games on it. Thunderbirds and Super Silver. I still think that's funny. When I bought it, I didn't think they knew what they were talking about. I went ahead and bought it anyway because I wanted it. I even have a Thunderbirds game for the PlayStation 2 that was only released in Australia and New Zealand. I have no way to play it, but I like the Thunderbirds, so sue me. And yes, I know there is a new Thunderbirds series coming out this year, or at least there's supposed to be. Okay, machine language for the Commodore 64, 128, and other Commodore computers. Revised and expanded edition. More of the same. Now, you may be wondering, where did I get that thumbnail image from? This book, More Basic Computer Games, 84 challenging new games to play on your personal computer, all in BASIC and complete with program listing and sample run. Now, each game, or most of the games I should say, in addition to having the name, how to play the game, and line by line the code, has an illustration. And it was one such illustration that I used. Road repair, That looks like an interceptor from UFO, another British science fiction television series from Jerry Anderson, that somehow went amok between the design stage and the building stage. There was one I tried to use, but every time I tried to take a photo of it, it turned out to be out of focus, so I couldn't use it. Now what do you suppose that illustration, which game that is for? Come on, focus. I think they coded this picture so it couldn't be photographed in focus. That's what I think. There we go. Okay, I was wrong. Pinball. Okay, for the last Brucey bonus. I was going through my magazine collection trying to fulfill the request of another viewer when I came across this. I didn't think I had any more games for this system left in my collection. Space Hawk for the Intellivision. This is complete. Even has both overlays for the controllers. When my Intellivision died, I gave away or sold most of my Intellivision collection, a lot of it was complete in box, including one of the hardest to find, rarest games for the Intellivision released back in the day, Stadium Mud Buggies. I had done a video showing my Intellivision collection, which is no longer up because I no longer have those games. In any event, Mr. Intellivision saw that video and immediately contacted me and wanted to know if I would be willing to part with that game. He reminded me, of course, that he was just a kid and couldn't afford what it was worth. It can go for as much as $350 on eBay. I don't know what it goes for loose. Perhaps that's the price it goes for loose, because loose is typically how it's found. My copy was complete in box, which is what I think got his attention. It was tied as one of the last games with one other game. There were two games that were tied as the last two games released back in the day for the Intellivision. I don't recall what the other one was. And Stadium Mud Buggies barely got out the door. It had very sophisticated graphics for the Intellivision. In fact, it looks very much like an NES game. So, and I just happened to luck into that too. When I bought my Intellivision used, I got a lot of games in their original boxes and some that weren't in their original boxes, that were just loose. And it just so happened that a complete in-box copy of Stadium Mud Buggies was in there. I didn't think anything about it. Knowing that Mr. Intellivision is just a kid, I shipped it to him and told him basically, if you want to send me a couple of PSP games, whatever, you know, we'll call it even. And that's what he did. Anyway, I think that about covers it. I've rambled on long enough. So until next time, don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.